They walked past him every day, unaware, lost in their own world, never seeing the man who sat silently on the corner. To them, he was just another face in the crowd. But Tommy was far from ordinary. He was a man with a past, a purpose stolen from him, and a pain that kept him invisible. Then one day, Emily stopped. She didn't know why, but that small moment changed everything. What she uncovered wasn't just a man in need. It was a story of survival, betrayal, and a world that had turned its back. This is the story of the man no one saw, until it was too late to look away. Where are you watching from? Don't want to miss more powerful stories like this? Hit subscribe and like now. It was a quiet Friday night, the kind that blends into the routine of city life. Cars moved through the streets, their lights flickering as people went about their evening. Outside a popular downtown restaurant, guests dressed in elegant outfits stepped inside, eager to enjoy the luxury and comfort the place was known for. The restaurant had a reputation for its five-star service and exclusivity. It was where big deals were signed over fancy dinners, and couples marked special occasions. It was a place where everyone fit in so long as they looked like they belonged. But then the door opened, and Tommy Hartman walked in. He was in his late 40s, wearing old, mismatched clothes that seemed barely held together. A weathered bag hung from his shoulder, and his tired eyes scanned the room cautiously, as if he wasn't sure he should even be there. The contrast was startling. His rough appearance didn't match the polished elegance around him. Conversations hushed, and heads turned as whispers filled the air. The manager, Peter, a tall man with a sharp jawline and an impeccable suit, noticed the shift in atmosphere. With practiced ease, he strode over to Tommy, offering a forced smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Excuse me, sir. I'm afraid we have a dress code here," Peter began, his tone polite but with an edge of irritation. Tommy, with his weathered face and exhausted eyes, looked up at the man. "I just need a glass of water, maybe a leftover or something," he said softly, almost pleading. Peter's patience thinned. "I'm sorry, sir, but I'll have to ask you to leave. We can't allow loitering in this establishment." Tommy's eyes flickered, a flash of something beneath the surface. But he didn't argue. He merely nodded and turned toward the door. The door swung shut behind him with a soft click. And yet, there was something unsettling about the whole scene. It wasn't just the man being turned away, but something deeper, something in the air that no one could quite place. Emily had been watching from the back of the room. She had seen the whole exchange. She had watched the man leave, his shoulders hunched, his face devoid of anger, only a quiet resignation. But there was something about the way he looked that made her pause. He didn't belong here, true, but that didn't make him less of a person. Her heart stirred with something she couldn't quite identify. After her shift ended, she grabbed her jacket and made her way toward the back door. She was just stepping outside when she saw him again. He was sitting on the curb, staring at a crumpled photograph in his hands, as though the entire world had disappeared except for that one faded image. She hesitated. A mixture of sympathy and curiosity pushed her forward. Without thinking much about it, Emily approached him. "Hey," she said softly. "You all right?" Tommy looked up, surprised, and for a split second, his eyes softened with gratitude. "I'm fine," he said quietly, taking the water and sandwich Emily had brought. "Just needed to catch my breath." Emily sat beside him, keeping her distance, but her presence was a comfort. "I'm sorry they turned you away," she said. "It wasn't right." Tommy gave a small, wry smile. "It's okay. People don't know what they're looking at. It's easy to judge." There was a long pause. Emily, curious but not wanting to intrude, hesitated. "Do I know you from somewhere?" Tommy's laugh was hollow, but it held a deep, melancholic resonance. "You might have known me a long time ago." The next morning, Emily couldn't get the man out of her mind. There was something about him, something familiar, but she couldn't place it. So, she did what anyone would do in this day and age. She searched. She dug through the internet for hours, piecing together fragments from news articles, old business profiles, and family photos. And there, buried in an article from nearly a decade ago, was the answer. Tommy Hartman wasn't just any homeless man. He was the Tommy Hartman, the founder of the now famous Hartman's Grill chain. Once a self-made millionaire, Tommy Hartman had built an empire from the ground up. His restaurants were revered for their quality and innovation. But then came the crash, the sudden loss of his wife and daughter in a tragic car accident. After their deaths, Tommy vanished. No one knew where he had gone. The once celebrated restaurateur was never heard from again, his name disappearing into the shadows of history. Emily's heart sank as she looked at the photo of a younger Tommy standing proudly in front of a Hartman's Grill restaurant, his family beside him. She recognized it now, the quiet dignity in his posture, the same eyes that had looked at her the night before. She couldn't believe it. The man she had seen yesterday wasn't just a beggar. He was a man who had once had everything, and now he had nothing. Later that day, Emily spotted Tommy again. He was sitting near the same street corner, watching the restaurant from across the road. His posture was defeated, but there was a kind of resolve in the way he watched the building. Emily felt a lump in her throat as she approached him. "Mr. Hartman?" she began gently, though she could see the discomfort on his face as he shook his head. "I told you. Don't call me that," he muttered. "That man died a long time ago." "But you are him," Emily pressed. "You're the one who built all of this. You deserve to be seen." Tommy smiled softly. "I built it for them, not for me. Without them, this whole thing doesn't mean anything." But Emily wasn't ready to let the story end like that. "Please," she said, her voice pleading. "The people who work here, they need to know. The people who come here, they should know who you really are." Tommy looked at her, a faint flicker of emotion crossing his face. But before he could say anything, the restaurant manager, Peter, appeared, stepping out of the building and looking towards Tommy. "Not again," Peter muttered under his breath, clearly irritated. "What's the deal with this guy?" Emily, filled with newfound determination, turned to Peter. "This is Tommy Hartman. He's the one who created this place. This restaurant. It's his." Peter's jaw dropped. "What? That's impossible." Tommy pulled out the crumpled photograph from his bag, the one that had been his lifeline through all those years of grief. He showed Peter the picture, himself with his wife and daughter, standing proudly in front of their first restaurant. The truth hit Peter like a punch to the gut. This was no ordinary homeless man. He had just turned away the founder of the very business he worked for. The news of Tommy's identity spread like wildfire. Social media was abuzz, with posts and tweets recounting the story of the man who had once built the cornerstone of their community, but was now homeless. Local news outlets picked up the story, interviewing former employees and patrons who shared fond memories of the early days of Hartman's Grill. For many, it was a sobering reminder of how easily life's circumstances could change. The polished faces that once smiled across the restaurant tables began to reflect a collective guilt. How had they failed to recognize the man who had given them so much? But this wasn't a story that ended in regret. Emily couldn't rest. Her heart ached for Tommy, and she saw the chance to help him reclaim his life. Driven by a fierce determination, she launched a GoFundMe campaign titled, "Help Restore Tommy Hartman, the Heart of Hartman's Grill." Her heartfelt message read, "This is the story of Tommy Hartman, the founder of our beloved restaurant and a man who lost everything but never stopped caring. Let's show him the same kindness and generosity he gave us for years. Let's give him a chance to rebuild." Within hours, donations started pouring in. Small contributions from local families came with messages like, "Tommy, your restaurant was where my parents celebrated their anniversary. You gave us memories we'll never forget. I worked as a dishwasher at Hartman's Grill when I was 16. Tommy, you taught me the value of hard work. I owe you." Even strangers joined the cause after hearing the story, inspired by Tommy's resilience and Emily's compassion. Videos and photos of Tommy's old restaurant and his iconic family photo went viral, pulling at heartstrings far beyond the town. Within weeks, the campaign had exceeded its goal. Tommy was overwhelmed when Emily handed him the check. He didn't say much, words failed him, but the tears streaming down his face spoke volumes. With the funds, Tommy was able to move into a modest but cozy apartment. For the first time in years, he had a roof over his head and a bed to call his own. His new neighbors welcomed him warmly, some even recognizing him from the news. Slowly but surely, Tommy began to rebuild his life. But he didn't stop there. Tommy knew firsthand how it felt to have nowhere to go. He decided to channel his second chance into helping others who were in the same position he had once been. With Emily's encouragement and connections, he opened a community kitchen named Hartman's Table. The kitchen operated on a simple principle. Anyone who walked through the doors would leave with a full stomach, no questions asked. Volunteers from all walks of life came to help, from high school students earning service hours to retired chefs who wanted to give back. The interior of Hartman's Table was humble but filled with warmth. The walls were adorned with black and white photographs of Tommy's family, the restaurant's early days, and snapshots of the bustling community that Hartman's Grill had once fostered. At the center of it all hung the photo Tommy had carried with him through all those years. Him, his wife, and his daughter, standing proudly in front of their first restaurant. The kitchen quickly became more than a place for meals. It was a haven. Strangers became friends over shared tables, and volunteers found joy in giving back. Tommy's story inspired many who walked through those doors, proving that even the most devastating losses could lead to incredible new beginnings. On the one-year anniversary of Hartman's Table, the entire town came together to celebrate. Patrons who had once dined at Hartman's Grill stood shoulder to shoulder with those who had found comfort at the community kitchen. Emily spoke about the journey, her voice cracking with emotion as she described how one man's resilience had reminded them all of the power of kindness. When Tommy took the stage to thank everyone, the room fell silent. He held up the iconic family photo and said, "This picture reminds me of where I came from, but today, looking at all of you, I see where I'm going. Thank you for giving me a reason to hope again." The applause was thunderous, filled with love and admiration. Tommy never returned to the luxury or fame he once had, but that didn't matter. He found something far more valuable, a purpose that gave his life meaning. Instead of chasing material success, he focused on helping others who had fallen on hard times, sharing his story to inspire hope and remind them that change was always possible. For Emily, the experience was just as life-changing. What began as a simple act of kindness taught her the power of truly seeing others for who they are. Helping Tommy gave her a deeper understanding of the impact of compassion and showed her that lifting someone else can also transform your own life. Tommy's journey became a quiet but powerful example for the community. People began to look beyond appearances and notice those they had once overlooked. His story proved that even when someone feels invisible, they still have worth and potential waiting to be seen. The man who was once unseen had finally been recognized, and that moment of connection inspired a lasting change. Together, Tommy and Emily left behind a legacy of kindness that transformed their lives and the world around them.